Hi there, today I'm going to show you how to make a quick and easy card using your stamping sponges, inks, and a single stamp set. This stamp set is called Thoughts and Prayers, and it has a really pretty tree here. Lots of different sayings that you can use for sympathy cards, thinking of you, and I thought this would work for a masculine card as well. And you're going to start with Whisper White cardstock. This is cut 4 inches by 5 1/4, and you're going to make a mask for sponging the landscape. So you can see that little curve right there. I do recommend using something a little sturdier than copy paper because you don't want this to bend while you're sponging. So I just used my scissors. I didn't even trace it. I just cut a simple curve. If you're more comfortable tracing before you cut, that's fine too. So I first like to stamp the tree. So I'm going to use a tree on this side. I'm going to use an ink called Early Espresso. I'm going to place it kind of towards the top and to the left a little bit. And once I set it down, I want to hold it with one hand and press with the other, just to get a nice solid inking. Now this ink pad was pretty juicy, so I want to make sure that that tree is nice and dry before I start sponging. So if I'm in a hurry, I'm just going to turn this over. I'm going to set it down on my scrap paper here. I'm holding it with one hand and I'm lightly rubbing with the other. This will help to pick up any excess ink there. So now I'm going to set my mask and kind of figure out where I want my tree to be. And I know that I want it to be in a little bit of a valley rather than on a hill. So I'm going to set the mask like this so I can just see the bottom of that tree. And it's important that you see the bottom of the tree a little bit, because when you start sponging, your ink won't go exactly to the edge. There'll be a little bit of a gap there. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to use an ink called, I think it's called Pear Pizzazz. Oh yes, and this is a returning color, so it's coming back in the new catalog. So I have my stamping sponge that's cut into 1/4, and I'm holding it on the pointy part so it kind of rounds the edge of the sponge, and then I'm just kind of patting on the ink pad. You want to go in a soft circular motion. It's easier to add more ink if it's too light, but if it's too dark, it's going to be harder to blend that in. So just, and you can see most of the ink actually goes off the paper. So just go in a soft circular motion, and I'm just trying to get that line going first. So I'm just going right along the top, and again a soft circular motion. If you streak it back and forth, sometimes you can see the streaks. So once I get that first line going, then I can kind of go to the bottom, and you can hear that noise that it's making. That's actually good. You want to hear that. So just keep going in a soft circular motion. And we're actually going to come back and do this a second time, so I don't need to get this as dark as I want it. I just want to get that first layer on. So see, there's the little line that you've done with the hill, and we just want to have another hill in the background. So I'm going to scoot this like this, so we're just patting it on the ink pad, and I'm being very careful not to go to that area that I haven't masked. So I'm just going to go in a soft circular motion, and I just keep going. And then we just kind of fill that in. Now what happens is this first line that we did isn't as defined. So that's okay. We just go back, put this on top, and again it's important that you see a little bit of that tree. Pat, pat, pat on your ink pad. You've got your sponge nice and curved. And then you just go right along that edge where the paper is. So I'm just trying to reinforce that line there. And you don't want this to be a solid color either, so you like the nice variation in color. So then when you lift that, see how that hill is a little more defined there. So it looks pretty. So you want to have some changes in the ink as well. So now we're going to do the sky. So you can, if you want, you can mask and cover up the green that you've already done, but the color blue that I'm using is so light that even if I went over on the green a little bit, you're not going to notice. And this is called Soft Sky. This is also a returning color. And I'm going to start with the outside edge of the paper. I don't want to go right to the middle in case there's too much ink on here and it leaves kind of a streaky blob. So I want to get most of the ink off on the outside edge. So I'm really just hitting the edge. And you can see what a light color blue that is, which is actually nice. And so again, I'm going to the outside edge, and then once most of the ink is off, I kind of work my way in. And you just want to keep going in a soft circular motion. And go back to your ink pad, and again, start off the paper, right around the edges, and keep going. So now I'm going to go around the tree, and I'm using, I'm patting the sponge, but I'm using kind of that little bit of a curve on the edge, not the whole round part here, but more right there, just so I have more control over the sponge. So again, soft circular motion, and you start on the edge of the cardstock, so you're doing the edge of the paper first. So again, edge of the sponge, start off the paper and work your way in. And I'm not really sponging over the tree. I want to sponge around the tree, but I'm not going to sponge over it. This will give kind of a little bit of a glow around the tree. Okay, so that turned out really pretty, right? And it didn't take a lot of time. So now we're going to stamp our greeting. So tap, tap on your ink pad. So we're going to press firmly and lift that up. So again, this ink is kind of juicy, so I want to make sure that it's not going to smear. So I'm just going to turn this over, hold it with one hand, and then I'm just going to kind of press. And if that greeting was really inky, which it was, some of the excess ink will come off there. So now we're going to finish it off with some of this Early Espresso 1/4 inch grosgrain ribbon. Add tape around the back. I put the ribbon right along here. Because I've got tape along the back, the ribbon's going to stick, but I'm going to put more tape on top once we get it in the right spot. And then we're going to put some tape directly on top, just to make sure that doesn't come off. This is cut the normal size that we cut our cardstock, 5.5 by 8.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4 and folded in the middle. You're going to set this down. You're going to hold this up in your hand and set the bottom edge and the two sides down. And this one's actually cut a little bit smaller. That's why I ran out of room. I'll show you in a minute. I didn't realize I had grabbed the wrong size cardstock here. So this measurement's actually smaller than what I gave you earlier, but that's okay. Okay, so this is going to have a little bit of a wider border, which is okay. And we're going to slip this under. And we're not really tying a knot. If I tied a knot, it would be a little on the lumpy side. So I'm only going to tie it once. And then I'm going to tuck a glue dot underneath so it doesn't come untied. So it's important that you stick a little glue dot underneath there. So here's our glue dots. I'm going to use the point of this scissors to lift that off. And then I'm just going to tuck it right under here. And that'll keep that from coming undone. And it'll give you a little bit of a flatter knot for mailing too. So now that we have our knot glued down, we're going to use the big scissors. These are my ribbon scissors. I'll give you a nice clean cut for your ribbon. And we're good to go. So this is the one that we ended up with. Here's the one I started out with. So you can see the border smaller here, but this still looks nice with a bigger border. It works out great. So I hope you like this technique for using sponges and masks to make a pretty easy and simple landscape background. So give it a try and post a link to your samples. I'd love to see what you come up with. If you'd like to see more projects, please visit my blog at KeenanCreations.com. Thank you.